Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back for Anatomy of a Movie, where we're talking Keanu. No, not Keanu Reeves. Keanu, as in the movie by Key and Peele. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movie.
That's right, kitten. We talk movies here. Kitten, please. We're talking Keanu here on Popcorn Talks, Anatomy of a Movie. We've got Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everyone. Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
And the voice from the booth, the disembodied figure, but you can see him if you're watching on video, Zach Wilson.
Hey guys, I'm very excited to talk about this movie. It was one of the funniest things I've seen in a while.
Let me ask you this quick question before we fully get started. Are we going to talk more about Key and Peele or more about George Michael? What will, ultimately
I think there was a fair balance between both of those.
Definitely. For those of you joining us for the first time, we dissect the movies in depth, where we talk about casting, the story, and all of production. So we assume you've seen the movie. It's a very spoiler filled, so don't be surprised. Stop now if you haven't seen the movie. Go see the movie because it's very, very funny, and then come back to us. And you can get all of our rundowns in the description, so that way you can kind of follow along with us as well. So, as we always like to do, let's start with overall impressions. Why don't we start with you, Marisa?
All right. Well, Key and Peele, I haven't actually seen their full show in length, but I've seen a few episodes here and there, and they always make me laugh. And seeing Keegan-Michael Key in a few other movies and stuff, he's funny. So I know these guys are really funny, and it's nice to. I was excited to see a full feature-length film from them. And just watching the trailers, I was like, yeah, I would totally see this movie. It seems ridiculous, but it looks really fun. And sure enough, it was that kind of movie.
Absolutely. And Zach, what about for you, buddy?
It wasn't a perfect movie. There are parts of it that don't necessarily make sense. But I was laughing throughout. The jokes landed, everything was funny, and that was all I wanted out of this movie. And there were kittens running around. So much kittens. Or one kitten, but it was a bunch of them, technically.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like the premise, the fact that you can hang your hat on this ridiculous premise of a kitten gets stolen, and we got to get it back. I mean, the closest I think I can think of a movie like this is Homeward Bound. Obviously totally different in terms of tone. And so I like that they took kind of that concept of pets being lost and spun it on its head. And, what I also like, and having done the research for this now, they're so, just their attention to, they both have very diverse backgrounds in terms of race, and the fact that they were kind of able to bring that in, I enjoyed. I thought they did a wonderful thing, and so whatever the faults of the movie may be, I can surpass that because I'm always looking for a good comedy, and I think this has a lot of rewatchability, and I think it'll pick up steam in years to come, and it's going to be remembered as a good comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. What I liked about this film is it kept me laughing throughout the whole film. There really weren't any boring parts. It was still funny no matter where you went along on the ride with these guys. So
absolutely. Well, so in terms of the development of this, back in October, New Line Cinema kind of announced this, but I wanted to get your guys' take because it was similarly announced with John Wick, and many people thought that this was just a parody, that this was a spoof of what was happening, and I to a degree understand it because here you have a movie named Keanu. John Wick is starring Keanu Reeves, so it's kind of confusing in that regard. But at the same time, I don't fully understand it, and I wanted to kind of get your guys' take on that and why people were so confused initially.
I think it was just a basic. I never saw John Wick, but I know the basic premise was similar, right? It was it was centered around an animal that got an animal and bad guys and hunting them down.
I wouldn't even say, here's the thing, to kind of spoil John Wick a little bit. By the way, we did do an enemy for it. I'm going to give you 12 more seconds before you tune out on spoiler. In John Wick, yeah, the dog is very...
Spoiler alert.
Absolutely. The dog is... there's a scene where they do brutal things to the dog, but it's not necessarily the catalyst for all of it, and the dog's in it ultimately for 5 minutes, whereas this... it's all about Keanu. I mean, it's so much so that it's named Keanu.
I mean, it's the fun premise. I mean, this to me this seemed like it was just born out of, hey, what if we did a movie about cats, because cats are popular, and then it just, but like with Key and Peele, they do so much quality sketch comedy that taking this and then bringing it to the level where something so ridiculous as just a movie centered around a kitten is hilarious because of who they are and what they bring to creatively to the process.
One of the craziest things for me in this, I just want to make sure I have him correct. I think it's Keegan. He's allergic to cats. So the fact that like he knew this and like just right from inception that he was okay with the idea that he's allergic to cats, and this whole movie he's gonna have to be around kittens is just so funny to me, and just shows their dedication of, because you could see that right from the get-go of being like, guys, I don't know if I can do this movie.
Well, I think that just shows how game he was for this story and how much he wanted to do it, that he's willing to put himself through that. And I think that's just shows like a good actor would, suffer for the art.
Absolutely. So luckily that wasn't a roadblock initially. And
just trying to think of like other people who's done that. I know Deborah Messing, she's allergic to flowers, and yes, she did The Wedding Date, which is all about weddings and being surrounded by flowers. So some actors go through that.
Yeah, indeed.
You suffer for your art.
You suffer for your art, exactly.
Well, I guess there's different types of suffering ultimately. I mean, there's the Revenant type of suffering where you can do that, but it's like, why do it? Whereas this is like, so anyway. So let's talk about the writing. Jordan Peele and Alex Rubens obviously both were involved in Key and Peele on Comedy Central. Alex having directed a lot of the stuff. And just the blend of this action and this absurd premise. And Zach, I want to go to you because Marisa isn't a resident expert by any means, unfortunately, on Key and Peele.
I'm not.
You are.
I mean, I've not all of their show, but a lot of it. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of thing you can just sit down with for several hours. I mean, it's what they do is classic, well done sketch comedy, and I think the biggest thing about them is that they always go big with everything. Like, they'll take a simple premise and they build, the way their comedy builds is just so structurally perfect. They know exactly what they're doing when they heighten a sketch. And that's what this movie does. It takes the premise of, okay, well, I found a cat. What's the most ridiculous way that this cat could have been, like, if it was lost, what's the most ridiculous place it could have been before I found it? Oh, it was in a drug lab with it was a shootout, and it was the gangster's favorite pet, and then it got away. Like, that's the most extreme version of it, and that's what they're good at, is finding the most extreme version of a story.
Yeah, and I also like the notion of the spawned out of their love of action movies from the 80s and the 90s, and when you go back to those, like, there's such a great element of comedy. Mm-hmm. And I can't think of many movies nowadays that have, the crime as well as the comedy, mixed so well. And so I appreciate, obviously I call this more of a comedy than an action movie, even though there's obviously tons of action. Maybe that's just me skewing it, but I enjoyed what they were going for, and that was their kind of catalyst to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I get the 80s, 90s feel because, this is a buddy comedy. There's two of them. And, like, the big movies back then were probably, like, Lethal Weapon, and then you had, Die Hard every once in a while. So you have your few movies that always have, like, the buddy duo pairing through a crazy situation, which is always fun to watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think as an action movie, it's good, maybe not great. But as a comedy, it very much succeeds. As an action movie, it's good. As a comedy, it's great.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And the whole notion of just everybody loves kittens, so let's go with that. Now, Zach, you had done some research about why they ultimately named him Keanu. I have a little bit, but no, why don't we meet in the middle? Why don't you kind of open it up as to why they actually named him Keanu?
I mean, for what I saw, it was mainly just like that's what this like. They're a fan of Keanu Reeves movies, and it's just that's a ridiculous name for a cat. Did you have like an actual?
Yeah, so I have a quote.
soundbite?
I have a quote from Peele. He says, "Keanu is one of those names. It's funny because it only belongs to one person. Any name like that, like Sigourney or fucking Joaquin, is automatically funny to me. He's the leading man. He's the Hollywood kitten. He's the hero. He's the one that. So that's why Keanu was chosen ultimately."
I knew a Joaquin in college. There's at least 2 of them out in the world.
Yeah, but like Joaquin Phoenix status.
Oh yeah, I mean that's just an absurd name to exist. But yeah, I can't say I've ever met a Keanu that wasn't Keanu Reeves.
That assumes you've met Keanu Reeves.
I've not met any Keanus, to clarify.
Right.
But I think that's also very smart, like picking a name that's easily distinguishable and then having that, you know, already following of Keanu Reeves to bring to this kind of film. And we know, like, who's Keanu Reeves, the real guy, he's actually done a lot of action movies. And I think it's kind of goes in the same demographic to get those fans and
Yeah, no,
butts in the seats.
that was what I mean. I applaud them because they were smart, and that was one of the goals that they had was, listen, we know we can make a comedy, we know we can make it good, but by going to the big screen, we want to sort of expand our audience and go broader. Well, how do we do that? Well, if we name it Keanu, that perhaps has mass appeal, and going from there. So that way, people like you, Marisa, who may not be as familiar, now you are, right? And you know, and people that have kind of seen some of these sketches, right? They know that most of their fan base also comes from the fact of like just people sharing these videos over email, like, hey, check out this sketch, check out this sketch. And so the hope was this would be a centerpiece for people to now go to. And so I applaud it. I absolutely applaud it.
I mean, it's good to see these guys collaborate again on the big screen. I know they talked about the fact that they sometimes need a break from each other creatively, which as somebody who works often with a writing partner, I would say I work more with my writing partner than without him. It is good to just get a break from people. Because if you're in the same room with somebody for too long, working on one project or 2 projects, it can become you're just like, I don't like any. You're not funny. Go away. But like, it is funny. You just need a break from that person.
I think it's that too, and I also think not even from a person-to-person relationship thing. I think there is something beneficial where, number one, you guys can both walk away creatively, and then have different experiences, right? Because that's what having ultimately more than one writer is all about, is that you guys can come together. And if you guys are at a certain point sharing the same experiences, you guys have nothing new to bring to the table. But if you go out, separate for a bit, now you experience life or whatever, and now you can bring that to the table. So I think it's more of to me at least, it's more of a creative thing rather than like, oh my God, I can't stand to be in the same room as this person.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone goes through that every once in a while. But I think that's also just the creative process in general. Sometimes it's hard to actually go like from start to end without any breaks. That's basically nearly impossible. So it just makes sense that there are natural breaks from your, writing creative partner or whatever during a production.
Yeah. I do want to go back to this because I slightly missed it. But originally the film was going to be called New Jack Kitty. And as it's explained, I went to sleep one night and an angel came to my bed and said, no, save the puns for the next movie. So...
Yeah, because there were no puns in this movie at all.
None whatsoever. I can't think of a single one. So let's talk about this because obviously, moving into the story parts of it, there's so much that it draws upon. But for you guys, what was the most evident thing that you saw in terms of inspiration? Whether it's actually true or just something that you felt.
Like in terms of like other movies?
Yeah. Because obviously there's that influence.
Well, I mean, I didn't really see it as like trying to find their influences. I saw it more so like, I love the fact that they took this most innocent creature in the world, and they went over the top. Like, what's the most craziest story we can have this creature do or be a part of? And I liked the irony in that. I'm trying to think of other movies that might have had like something innocuous, and yet they made it crazy in that way.
I mean, it almost plays out like a Saturday Night Live movie. Like one of those, not in a bad way, because those movies are obviously very hit and miss, but it's sort of an extended sketch. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Some stories can last for 2 hours, some last for 2 minutes. This one just like, it was very sketchy in its just level of absurdity. It didn't need to be realistic in that way that sketch comedy doesn't worry about this could really happen in the real world. As long as you justify it, the steps into the existence, it's still the audience will still get it. And that's sort of how I felt about this movie. It doesn't make sense that like all of these things, they track the cat through the city. Like, that's illogical, but it doesn't matter because it works for the humor of the story.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that like kind of for some reason comes to mind is like Pee-wee Herman's Big Adventure, in like kind of in reverse when he loses his bike and he goes on this crazy adventure to go find it. I kind of feel like it might be in the same vein where, you know, the guys lost this kitten and then, you know, they find it and go on this crazy adventure and whatever happens with the kitten.
This is a good analogy. What about this, right? For me, if I had to nitpick anything, I felt once they got into character, meaning Shark Tank and Tectonic, that's when the movie elevated in terms of its comedy. Because before that, Rell and Clarence, you know, they weren't as funny to me. You know, it was until they became heightened versions of themselves that it just took it to the nth degree. And I wanted to get your guys' take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I like that because I think that was the whole point. They clearly established these characters as like the most normal, regular guys, and like how would they ever get swept up in the craziness that is about to go down? And I liked how, you know, Keanu came into their lives and threw them a curveball, and they had to be people who they weren't just to get into that crazy world.
It was sort of like they were playing the straight man characters to themselves. Like, they managed to play like the crazy fish out of water characters, but also be the straight man. Because they dropped themselves into this gangster world, so they're fish out of water, and they just drop into it in this ridiculous way. I mean, Shark Tank is
Shark Tank.
It's
Yo, Tectonic.
It's the most like suburban gangster name you could have ever come up with. It's great.
It's funny because, you know, if you think about the actual show Shark Tank, that's like one of the most high white collar kind of shows.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What was it? Was Tectonic a reference to anything, or just it was just so weird and odd, like tectonic plates? That, I mean, who thinks of that?
It's like it's a science term. Like, it's not something from the streets. It's not like, yo, this is 9mm. No, this is tectonic. Like the San Andreas Fault that could kill us all at any moment.
Oh my god.
Maybe they went with that. It's like you never know what's gonna happen.
Maybe that's what it is. It's like tectonic plates. Like, that's violent. That's dangerous, in a very natural sort of way.
Always unpredictable.
I did like I love that aspect of the whiteness versus like gangster culture and whatever else. And I thought they played that so well. And obviously George Michael, and we'll talk about him. There's a whole section dedicated just for George Michael. But I absolutely loved it. The way they were able to twist that on its head.
I think it was really funny, and I think that was a great blend of the two worlds crashing, but in a very comedic way.
Let me ask you guys this: in terms of like the culture and things like that, like, what do you think? I'm trying to figure out the right way to kind of ask it, and ultimately what I'm trying to ask. But like in terms of all the references, right? The Bloods versus Crips, where they're the Blips, and then
I love that the B team, the gangster B squad,
Yeah.
the rejects, they go form their own. Like, where are they? 17th Street.
Like, where does this all ultimately come from? And I don't even know if that's the right question to ask, but you know, I mean, I don't know. What can you say really about comedies? 'Cause it's just hilarious.
I think that's what made it funny, because there were so many crazy people in this universe that we're watching that should they be there? That's the question. Like, we kind of know that they shouldn't be there, but it's fun to see all these different types of personalities. Like, how did they even get there in the first place? And I think that's, you know, the joy of just watching it all unfold.
Yeah, and, you know, so Peele, he also said, like, you know, guys like Keegan and I never have been leads in an action movie, and so Keanu's kind of a wonderful symbol where Key and Peele in this movie, they're able to step in the genre, but it wouldn't have been if they didn't write it themselves. So I like that whole, you know, I agree. Like, none of the blips and anything else would not be possible unless they really sat down and did this. And as we'll talk about more a little bit later on, what I like about this, like, if you look up the credits of most of these other people, number one, they've primarily just been involved in the sketch comedy show, and so they don't really have other credits than that. And I appreciate that the entire team got back together, whether it was the cinematographers, the writers, the editors, and so forth, and they just wanted to create this amazing movie, and they have that collaboration where they were able to achieve that.
I think that's great also for, you know, people who do have that talent of writing and producing and putting something together, such as their show, and they loved it so much that they put something as a feature-length film out there into the world. And I think that's just great on people, because when opportunities aren't there for you, like what Keegan was saying, like, they normally probably wouldn't get casted at least, so they wrote an opportunity for themselves to do that. So I think good for them.
So much so that they were actually the Allentown brothers. And did you guys know that they were actually playing the brothers? Because I had no clue whatsoever until later.
The instant they walked in. Like, I think just from watching their show, I've seen them in so many different makeup, get-ups, and, like, ridiculous things that, like, just the size. Mm-hmm. I knew just from, like, the height difference and, like, the size and the shape of the two people. I was like, oh, that's Key and Peele. For a moment, I thought it might be like a flash forward, that it was going to be like how these two characters end up by the end of the movie, which would have been a funny twist, that Rell and Clarence just wind up as super hardcore murderers. But I liked them playing. It again fit like what like as a fan of Key and Peele, like what I know about them as performers. They like to play multiple roles. They're not afraid to put on a wig and to play a woman for a sketch. Like, it's just part of what they do, is get into ridiculous costumes and become other characters.
Well, the thing I would say that's slightly different, right? That there's a difference between what was that? White chicks, right? Where, like, they dress up as you know what I mean? Where you dress up like a girl, but it's just so terrible, and that kind of becomes the comedy. Whereas in this, I legitimately bought into the fact that
These are scary guys.
Yeah, and they looked the part. There was no, like, this is ridiculous. It was just like, wow. Who's the guy who plays Danny Trejo, right? It looked like this could be a distant cousin of Danny Trejo.
I mean, I'm with you, Phil. I didn't realize it to the end credits when they showed that they had dual roles. I was like, oh shoot, I should have known, because there were some close-up shots of these guys, of the dark guys, and what were their names?
The Allentown.
Yeah, Allentown brothers, Dresden and Smoke Dresden, the Dresden guys. But there were some close-ups, and you could, like, see their facial reactions, and still, even that close, I didn't realize it was them. So good on the makeup.
Absolutely. And kind of, I guess, for me, if I'm to admit, one of the things that definitely had me fooled was when they were in the scene together where, you know, Rell and Clarence are tied up, and then they're being, whatever, you can call it, interrogated certainly threatened by the Allentown brothers. So the fact that they were in a scene together definitely threw me off.
Yeah, and I like that with, you know, just cinematography, how we always see, like, doubles of the same people. And, like, I always find it interesting how they film that with, you know, they call it motion control, and how they automatically have it like recorded and set to a certain time on the camera to get everyone shot in the same scene. I think it's always fun when, you know, television shows or movies do that.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and I thought they did a wonderful job of it with each other. Who was your, in terms of secondary characters, who was one of your more favorite secondary characters?
I liked High C. She was
High
cool.
C.
Because, I mean, because even watching it, I was trying to think, like, how does she get involved with those guys? And the fact that she was getting a little close to
Rell.
to Clarence a little bit.
Was it? No, it was, Rell.
Rell.
Right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You're right. Rell. I was reading the minutes. Rell. That's like, I like this. And I was like, she can't be that bad. Mm-hmm. Because there were some like soft, vulnerable moments with her and Rell, and I was like, no, she can't be all that bad to be in that game.
Yeah. Speaking of secondary characters, guys, we're gonna throw to a commercial real quick because we got Sarah Stretton coming in.
Cool.
She's not secondary.
So we'll be right
tertiary.
back.
Sounds
after this
good.
Brief message.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We've added Sarah Stretton, our High C.
That's my favorite character. That's what I was just gonna get into.
What I
Well,
was
that's why we
saying.
brought you
I was
in.
like, I really liked High C. She was cool.
I really liked her. I was actually surprised by her twist. I didn't see that coming. I thought that she played like, I don't know, she didn't, it was just like a very like natural but funny but like in control badass girl. I liked it. She was my favorite.
Indeed. You know, so one of the things that obviously threw it off was the whole Anna Faris scene, which that was one of the more lengthier scenes, but I thought funny, and I personally enjoyed that because Anna Faris recently just came out with her podcast, and she was on Adam Carolla, so I listened to her there. So knowing her kind of personality a little bit more as a person, to then seeing her in this movie, just made it all the better. Because she's just such a lovable person and loves people.
I kind of thought, although I thought the pacing in general was really fun for this movie, even though the end wrapped up really quickly, her scenes was a little bit on the draggy side for me.
It was a weird scene.
It was.
It was funny once I like that they slow played that she was Anna Faris. Like they let us think like she could not be, and then they're just like, no, Anna Faris is into very ridiculous drugs and potentially murdering people.
Yeah, and it was also great because it was such a fun movie that they could have taken that scene any direction. Like when she brought out the samurai sword, I really thought she could start chopping them to bits, like from the get-go. So I liked that they set up just a movie where anything was possible. Mm-hmm. I also like the slow reveal, but in general, if I had to pick a scene that dragged, I think that would be one of my contenders.
I think so. I mean, it was probably one of those things. Well, we have Anna Faris, so why cut it?
User.
That's true.
Also, to be fair, it's an Anna Faris look-alike, right? Didn't they say at the end of the movie that they hire look-alikes?
Oh, did they? I missed that.
I missed that too.
I think that's true.
Yeah, because the whole explanation at the end kind of threw me off a bit. I was like, okay, so what was the purpose of Anna Faris' scene if she was only hired to do that? But if it was a lookalike, that makes way more sense.
If that was a lookalike, that was the most lookalike I've ever seen.
Well, it wasn't technically a lookalike. It was the real Anna Faris.
But she was supposed to play a lookalike, quote unquote.
So it's a lookalike. It's Anna Faris
playing
a
an Anna...
lookalike Anna Faris.
Correct.
I believe that is potentially the case.
I think one of the only other
That's like Julia
situations
Roberts in Ocean's
13
12
Yeah, Ocean's 12, yeah.
playing. Everyone's like, "You look like Julia Roberts." She's like, "Yeah, I get that all the time."
That's exactly what I was thinking, Ocean's 12.
That's
in
where they
this-
stole that from.
The only issue with that whole scene is like, if they were all in on the drug dealing, like if High C was in on it, if Anna Faris was in on it, if the other two people were in on it, what were they just trying to bust him? Because they were taking forever for that drug deal to go down. Like they were like intentionally stalling, and that was the only thing I couldn't figure out.
And they also were taking the drugs. I mean, just to
It's very
throw that
true.
out there, there was
very true.
there were some plot holes.
Well, to be fair, it was High C who brought in the drugs, so they could have been fake drugs.
I didn't get that impression from the reaction once the drugs were taken.
The holy shit.
They were
We
fake drugs.
We do have some help out in the from the chat roll. The Cult of Pop is reminding us that they said they hire celebrities for stings all the time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, got it.
Got it. Well, I think also, we keep mentioning that it was a long scene. Granted, a lot went on, but you got to remember this on a fair scene was always intercut with the George Michaels in the car. So I think we had two juxtaposed scenes together that kind of just drug it out the whole time.
Yeah, and it was the same joke in the car for
Yeah.
a while, so
It did feel long.
it was still funny. Like, I still laughed at multiple points. It wasn't that I laughed in the beginning of that scene and stopped laughing throughout, but I was like, yeah, this is a little bit on the longer side when compared to all of the great funny scenes they had.
Well,
Go ahead, Zach.
I was gonna say that was the thing with although the Anna Faris seemed like for me like didn't land as heavy, like it could have been cut down by like 50%. I think even the fact that they cut into the scene in the van, which was so funny and absurd, with these gangsters learning about the history of George Michael and then singing. It kept me laughing throughout that whole sequence, regardless of whether or not every joke was landing. I was laughing constantly.
Do you actually have to know George Michael in the sense that he is white and his father figure, like, you know what I mean? Or like if you don't know that fact, are you kind of equally confused? I like the gangsters.
I think
you have to know that
I think that the joke is helped. You don't need to know like the biography of George Michael, but if you know kind of what his image was, like as it's just like, how do you even describe
It's
George
like
Michael?
clean cut American,
American, like
the epitome of American
White
guy.
preppy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not familiar with George Michael at all. Like, I wouldn't know most of his songs if I heard them. Like, I wouldn't be able to say, oh, yeah, that's George Michael. But, like, they played his music enough that, like, we know he's not the guy that is being described in this scene. So it still works, even if you're not familiar with him at all.
I mean, to me, I've grown up with a lot of George Michael references. Zach, I don't know, you're an Arrested Development fan, correct?
That's like primary. That's probably the primary place I know the name George Michael from.
Yeah. So the whole whiteization of George Michael has been in my context for a long time, thanks to that TV show.
Well, maybe not just Arrested Development, just like the musician and the guy himself of George Michael. He's very American in image-wise, but his lyrics and his music is very clean as well, for the most part. And I think he's just like the most regular guy to have, again, as a reference to throw in this crazy world.
Well, as a side note, I don't know if you guys have already mentioned it, but other like quote unquote really white music was also considered. Like Paul Simon was considered instead of George Michael. That was the look they were going for. It's just kind of crazy.
And and to add to that, I think you pulled this one. The director said, "Since we've been making this movie, I've been listening to nothing but George Michael and the most fucking hardcore strip club rap music, and it's the best combination of music. It makes me feel sexy all the time."
All different types of sexy.
So the juxtaposition is wonderful, and I loved at the end when they said, "Wait, I bet he had a father."
Well, it's normally how comedy works. Comedy is juxtaposition, so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clash of context. It's like it's a classic clash of context scenario. You have gangsters who would never be listening to this, and they are just loving George Michael. They couldn't get enough.
Do you think people
Like
are
George
actually
Michael's
starting
brother,
to listen
right?
to George Michael thanks to this movie or no?
Maybe. I mean, if it opens up that world, sure.
I feel like that keeps happening. Like a lot of like old like 80s pop like artists will suddenly have this resurgence in sales after being referenced in a movie. Like
Oh, 100%.
like Archer spurred like a massive resurgence in downloading Danger Zone.
Or Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah.
That was
right.
just a
Oh my
huge soundtrack that brought in.
Well, that they
Put that
did they did
feeling,
it
man.
wonderfully because that was an actual soundtrack and mixtape and all that. So
This was just the George Michael soundtrack
Yeah.
and rap.
I think Peter Gabriel
I mean,
could have also been a great selection.
Deadpool just brought back like salt and pepper, so there you
Yep.
go.
Sure.
Very good. Let's talk about Method Man. I thought he did a wonderful job at being very scary. Ironically named Cheddar, or is
And another thing, his name's Cheese.
in The Wire.
Yes.
So an homage to
They
that.
put cheddar cheese on his resume.
Indeed, he's in a lot of great movies too. You know, a nice mix of comedy and action. So obviously works like How High, Fast and Furious, 8 Mile, Gone in 60 Seconds. So good mix of
think
movies
just-
he's known
I
for.
think just everyone did a really nice job of commitment to really wanting the cat. I'll give that to all
I don't
of
think
them.
that was hard motivation, to be honest.
It was such an adorable kitten. Like we totally bought that every one of these people would like
Everyone
fight to the
want this
death
cat.
over
over
Keanu.
the kitten. The kitten also had very little allegiance. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Very little what?
Allegiance.
Yeah,
The kitten was kind of like, I'll take whoever.
I mean, it's a kitten.
I saw the love between Rell and Keanu.
I think maybe at the very end, but I saw the love between like Keanu and Cheddar.
Wait, was it all the bling?
It was the snuggling, the snuggling of the kittens.
And the willingness to put up with all those photo shoots.
Or just outfits in general, because
It's a very well mannered
fun
cat.
kitten had a lot of different wardrobes.
Yeah, I did like that as speaking of the whole get her. I did like that as a catalyst for the love relationship between Rell and Keanu.
I believe the quote was, "Get that bitch."
So this is one of our more explicit podcasts, I'm guessing.
It
love
is Keanu. We're talking about Keanu here. So yeah, I think we might have dropped an F-bomb here and there.
It did actually catch me by surprise. I think maybe I just hadn't delved into the marketing as much, like the trailers. But I almost expected it to be a cleaner, like PG-13 movie.
I agree. I definitely thought that. I also was one of those people who really bought onto this was a John Wick parody movie and thought that for a very long time. Like, I think that's one of the first reference I heard about this movie was that it was a John Wick parody movie. So I thought that's what the truth of this film was. I didn't know that that was just like a rumor or an association that people have made after the fact, after they're made separately. I thought that was what this movie was. So luckily I found out just before seeing it, so I wasn't completely taken off guard. But
Here's the thing, I wouldn't say it's not a parody movie, but it's no different than the Scary Movie series. Like, you kind of pick a base of what you're parodying and then, you know, add on top of that. But to just parody, like, I wouldn't want to parody just John Wick.
well,
It also gives John Wick way more credit than it actually deserves. Not that it's a bad movie, I'm
People
just saying.
loved John Wick. That was
Yeah.
a surprise kind of film.
that was one of those ones that although it didn't make a lot of money, people loved it.
People loved it.
It's a good movie.
It's getting a second one.
Yes, it is.
Crazy.
Will Keanu get a second one? That is the question.
I think it depends on these guys, ultimately, to be honest.
Where would you even take it?
Well, the kitten never ages, so we know that.
What if Keanu had kittens and it'd
Oh,
be about the litter?
Speaking of that, like the Allentown brothers, you know, I didn't want to jump necessarily too far ahead, but if we're here, might as well. The Allentown brothers, did you guys all stay for the end sequence?
I waited and thought there was going to be an end sequence, and
There was.
there was.
They
Was it
get
at the
up.
like very, very end?
The Allentown brothers, they get up, and walk away. And they look pissed, as they normally do. And I think they're going to, roll some heads.
So, in fairness,
There you go.
Not
They're
to jump
back.
ahead either, that they went to jail for potential murder that they didn't even commit, technically.
No, it's not the murders that they committed. It was the damages.
gangs.
Yeah.
I was actually trying to figure out after the movie exactly what you could arrest them for.
Same.
because
Exactly, yeah.
Almost everything they did, you could argue self-defense. I guess they mostly stole some cars and stuff, but that was they had guns to their head or any number of things that you could legally get out of. I think it's just because they went along with the drug thing of their own free will at the beginning is the only thing I could even point to.
Yeah, it's a little hazy. I think that because of the extreme nature of this comedy, it would have been just as believable for at the very end them to have got away kind of scot-free with a thanks for helping us get all of these horrible people. We'll forgive everything you've done. That could have been just as in this world believable of a scenario as what they ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of what I expected them to do. Although it was sort of worth it just for the kitten paw on the glass.
The love.
And the fact that the rest of them were also in the same prison with them.
Yeah, I think ultimately, even if Clarence was probably given a choice, I think he would have done it just for the street cred. Because 6 months, it's
not too bad, actually.
It's not terrible, and you build up your street cred. So that's what I think ultimately they would have decided anyway.
His wife will be happy.
And in some weird twisted way, what I like about it is that, again, the message is just so hokey of every action has a consequence. And that's what you're left with.
And it's something we very rarely see with this type of movie. Normally, your foolish heroes end up getting off scot-free. They end up all in the good. And although they didn't portray jail being the worst consequence, it is a consequence.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Absolutely. What about the whole subplot of Clarence's wife? What was your guys' thoughts on that when he, just in general? But I loved when he finally kind of hulked up and just punched him in his face. Because I saw that from the get-go, and I don't think they tried to hide it too much. This guy's just the biggest guy. Of my wife is sick. But my wife is sick excuse, I wasn't buying it.
Yeah, I like the wife because she was that consistent point and focal point for Clarence's character to him to realize who he really was. Yeah, he got swept up in his personality and persona he was putting on, but she was always there to kind of help bring him back to his normal self. Mm-hmm. And then even at the end, despite everything they just went through, it was mostly him who punched the guy. So I was and then of course she was turned on. So
I didn't think it was the most dynamic part of his storyline. I think that a lot of the wife scenes kind of can be summarized quickly. There's not a ton of laughs attached, but what I liked about that component is that it kept us away from Clarence being too crazy in the club, or it really kept him stuck with the friendship and the respect that he was getting from these gangsters versus into a complete quote-unquote gangster life. We didn't see him completely 180, leave his family, start, dancing with all the strippers. It still gave him a line, which I liked.
I thought it was good it was a solid motivation for him to behave the way he was behaving, because you couldn't just if you just had this guy who behaves like this, he's very clean white collar suburban, and then he just drops into this gangster mode to get his friend's cat back. That's a little too insane.
Sure.
But with this little impetus of his wife is telling him he needs to let go and be who he really is, it's it gives him an excuse to search for that and be absurd in his attempt to do what his wife told him to do.
Sure.
And in some strange way, he is able to save the youth of the streets in a way, by being a parental figure for them, albeit not. You know, it would certainly be worse if they stayed with Cheddar versus him. So let's just say that. Will Forte, first off, for me, unrecognizable. But I loved how he just got into this character of this drug dealer.
A lot of commitment here. A lot of commitment.
I applaud it.
It was very funny. I loved the one simple line, like, you live across from your drug dealer? I'm like, yeah, right there. When the police are literally like 20 feet away from them. So funny.
I mean, I don't think you can deny that this film relies heavily on coincidence, but luckily they make coincidence funny.
You know, that's what you got to go with sometimes. I mean, even the mom living right there, like, Ma, I got this.
It was a fun character. Like, drug dealers are a good place to just like have fun with a role, and I love that they brought Will Forte in. He was hilarious.
There was also just like a wide range of bad guys, gangsters, drug dealers. Like, each of them had their own persona and their own power, and I thought each one was very entertaining.
Yeah, and the other kind of one that stood out was what's his name in the movie?
He's the drug dealer?
Jason Mitchell, right? Who played Eazy-E in Straight Outta Compton. He was... The interesting part to me was that he was kind of torn between this movie because he didn't want to start to be typecast as a gangster because of obviously playing Eazy in Straight Outta Compton. But, you know, that's... To me, you're just a good actor. I mean, that's what Straight Outta Compton definitely showed, that he's capable of that. And then this is just... He's just funny.
Yeah. I can understand, like, we don't know what's been going on behind closed doors. Like, maybe every script he's gotten, it has been very similar roles. Like, maybe this was the most different, was just that he was a gangster, but there was a comedic twist. We don't know what scripts he's been getting or offers he's been getting, but I agree that I think that he was a really talented actor, and I'd be wanting to see him in a variety of roles.
Absolutely. And one of the things we definitely had, so Keanu Reeves did end up making the movie. And I know Zach and Sarah, you guys have a lot of this information, but it was interesting how he kind of got involved.
Well, I can start with the fact how originally he wasn't. I'll start with the fact that at first it was a no.
Yeah, I love that his people just said they just straight up no. Like, it's not. They don't even know if he ever saw the script. His people just like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, politely, but was a no. And then what ended up happening was that Keanu Reeves' sister saw the trailer and thought it looked hilarious, went to Keanu Reeves and was like, you need to be in this. Of course, this is very late in the game, so they had to make adjustments. And what you get is the inclusion of the dream sequence, everything like that. But it was so close to when it was premiering at South by Southwest that they didn't even get Keanu Reeves' name in the credits for that premiere. But it's been changed.
Wow.
Supposedly. This is according to the news.
Talk about cutting it close.
Yes, and they even said they had to prompt Keanu Reeves to be more Keanu-y. That was a
What
word.
does that even mean?
Keanu-y. Well, the studio was pushing for... Yeah, exactly. The studio was pushing for, like, lines that Keanu is famous for saying. So, like, they were really pushing for Matrix lines, for whatnot. But they didn't want to go right that far. But they did at least put forward the be more Keanu-y. And Keanu Reeves did comply with that suggestion.
Were you guys sure it was him when you first saw it? I didn't know for sure until I saw the credits.
I knew before going in that it was going to be his voice.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that it could have been pushed a little further to show that it was him.
Yeah, for me, it was like, I think that could be Keanu Reeves, but I wasn't sure until I saw his name listed.
I agree.
I had no idea. I knew right away from the music that they were parodying The Matrix, because it's a very famous, like, score, at least for me, who's probably seen The Matrix 10,000 times. So I think it could have benefited from the line of, like, hey man, I'm Keanu Reeves. No, legit, I'm Keanu Reeves. I'm telling you what to do.
I enjoyed just having something as simple as Keanu's voice that kind of, in a way, it really validates this movie. Like, you have a movie called Keanu, and then you actually have Keanu Reeves in it.
Well, they've come out and said that the title, named Keanu, came basically from their love of action stars. It didn't. They had to clarify with Keanu Reeves that it wasn't them making fun of him. Like, they really do like him. But they've even said it was a marketing tool to use that name and bring people in. Like, they didn't need people to think, oh, this is a Key and Peele movie. They were like, Keanu's a big thing, and then they'll come in, they'll laugh, and they'll realize it's a Key and Peele movie. So it's a strategic plan on them. It was not made just for kicks and giggles.
I didn't know it was Key and Peele when I first saw the posters and stuff. I saw just like, what is this movie that is called Keanu and has a gangster cat? And I have to know more.
And you were intrigued.
See, I saw the trailer first, and I immediately knew it was Key and Peele.
Yeah, from now on, I'm gonna like Will
Just
Smith.
name everything like Cher, Madonna.
Yeah,
People will come see it.
absolutely.
Put strange animals on the cover.
Why not?
But you gotta love that kitten. Come on.
Speaking of which, of animals, right? So the snake is apparently named Montana. This is a little bit of an Easter egg. For me, it's a bit of a stretch, but Clarence's wife's name is Hannah. Combine the two, you get Hannah Montana.
Oh, good
A little
Lord.
bit of a stretch for me, but it's there. And people have made this connection.
Okay.
So
And how does PETA
how
feel
does-
about the snake?
Hannah Montana correlate with this film.
listen, that was one scary snake, and I hate snakes. And then when they at the end, when the drug dealer Hulka is just
Being eaten.
yeah, he's just
yeah.
halfway through the entire mouth of this snake.
It's such a funny moment to just like close out that whole sequence on. It's absurd. I'm laughing now just thinking, I'm in so much pain.
What
It
I-
looked painful.
What I like about it is just the economy of all of these jokes, right? They recycle them, they innovate them, so nothing is put on the table that isn't used again and switched up, which I think is wonderful.
It's true.
So
I think every bad gangster has a snake pet.
it sounds so wrong.
No. But, I mean, a pet as a snake.
I thought they did a phenomenal job just speaking of the animals, like the playing with the kittens, like in what they were doing was so well done. It never felt like they had lost control, even though I'm sure it was insanely difficult.
It's a very consistent tone for me. Like, consistently funny. Like, even the bits where it was just focusing on a cat running, I was actually laughing out loud. And I was just like, that's pretty good. All you're showing me is a cat running, and I'm laughing.
The cat running like with action sequence, like explosions or gunfire around him, was like one of the funniest parts of the movie.
It was, and it was dramatic music with it as well that made us like, this is a serious thing, a cat running, because we're fearing for this kitten's life. It's so good.
I thought that was wonderful, and one of my favorite lines in the whole thing, Clarence towards the end when he's like, "They're communicating."
Right.
Oh my god, absolutely ridiculous. Speaking of the cats, so total count 7 cats.
Yes.
Yep.
And most of them were from the same litter, but as those got too big, they had to pull from another litter because they needed to keep this kitten look. And they did apply some cat makeup, but I believe cat-friendly makeup, to make the markings try and look
same.
similar. I don't think I could get it exactly the same because it is a cat, but
I
they
wouldn't
tried.
have been able to tell one way or the other.
Enough that we could not tell the difference.
Yes.
Yeah, at no point was I going, "Oh, that cat's different."
Yeah, and the cats got trained to do different things. Some were just trained to basically sleep. Some were to claw. Some were to snuggle. Some were to run. You know,
Yeah, okay.
It was a serious role.
very serious.
Well, no, but yeah, I mean, it is, if you don't buy this cat, now obviously, like for the most part, any kitten you get is going to be cute. But if you don't buy, as we talk, the running and then this and that, it's not going to work. I mean, the clawing at the end, I mean, that's a pivotal scene where Keanu has to save our two guys. You know, if that doesn't work, the movie's out. So I love the absurdity of pinning everything on this. Like, the premise is absurd enough, but to actually then execute it with actual kittens is
I found it fascinating because they talked about like having to work with the cats and what was hard and what was easy, and they said it was a lot easier to get the cats like running from place to place or like from explosions or all that than it was to just get them sitting still and having like Rell interact with it. Like, that was the hardest part. And I can tell you, I have first-hand experience with this. It is very difficult to get a cat to sit still on camera. I directed a sketch, I think 2 years ago, for Awesomeness TV called Ben Katzenberg, cat meme agent, and we had like 3 different live cats throughout the sketch, or maybe it was two different live cats, and we had to get it to sit there in a chair and just have a guy yell at it, and the cat just did not want to stay there. It took a long time to get those shots.
I can imagine. Does this deter it away from Keanu too? Then it's like, you know what? We don't want to work with kids no more.
There's a trainer who can has a bear that he can put his head in the bear's mouth. So I think that they can make cats figure something out.
But remember, it's not cats. It's always going to be kittens because Keanu can't grow old.
That's right. It's true. It has a condition, right?
That was
a surprise condition.
Surprise condition.
That was such an adorable line. Like, he has a condition. He'll be a kitten forever. It's like so stupid.
And she played it so well because there was that beat of like, he has a condition, and literally, I the entire audience. It was just long enough where the entire audience is ready to almost tear up. Like, what's gonna happen to this kitten? Oh, he's just gonna be a kitten. Oh, okay, cool. So it works. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about a little more of the production angle of everything. So the director is Peter Antencia, who has done all 54 episodes as a director of Key and Peele. So obviously they've known each other for quite some time, and he understands them. And this is what Jason Mitchell said of them. Peter and Jordan and Keegan have a bond because they've been working together for so long. It's such a passion project for these guys, so coming into it has just been a pleasure.
I mean, it sounds like a good team. They've obviously been successful. I think that's why it's so tonally consistent, is because these people have been working together for years, know the sense of humor, can probably, their comedy chemistry is insane, so I'm sure their work ethic also shines.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to work with directors that you have a well-established working relationship, and I think also he knows what Key and Peele are like, and so to keep that consistent comedy throughout for the fans of the show should be also fans of the movie.
Yeah, and he also probably knows their timing, knows how long to keep the take going, can tell when they're stopping and starting, what to capture that is strong improv or whatnot. He has a read on them, or at least you would hope after so long together.
Yeah, especially the improv stuff, because these guys are prolific improvers, and they talk about how much they did it on set. And that Peele was very, Keegan had talked about that Peele was very much improvising with the cat whenever the cat would misbehave, or not misbehave, but do something, walk away, and he would play with that. And you need a director that knows how to work with those guys and to give them those moments to let them play while also making sure you're getting what you need at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. So, it came out on screen. The challenge for them was always going to be, how do you translate it to the movie, right? Because then ultimately you just have to figure out how to edit it all together so it does make sense. And we talked about, Sarah, if you want to kind of name any slight nitpicks, but we all kind of chose ours, and we agreed for that whatever they were, on the whole, it worked so well that it didn't matter.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's questionable plot holes and the motivation's ridiculous, but I felt I'm always about the goal of whoever's making it coming across. Because that's really, yes, you can be nominated or you can make lots of money, but I hope that most people who have a vision for what they want to create, if their vision's accomplished, then that's a success. And it seems to me, from my experience, which was like laughing out loud in this theater and reading the interviews, which is like that's what they wanted, just to make people laugh, for it to be ridiculous, to kind of be a little bit of an escapism movie. All those are check marks, so they did a good job.
Absolutely. So
Comedy's hard.
comedy's very hard.
Comedy's very hard. I think that more often than not, we get on here and talk about a comedy, and typically there's like just chunks of it that could disappear, or there's funny moments, but you're not talking about the whole thing being funny, at least recently. And I thought that as far as this stands up for like this year, it's one of the funniest movies I've seen in a while.
I agree. I 100% agree. And as I said, I forget if you were here for it, but it's just a bunch of passionate people that got together and they wanted to form this movie.
It reads, or like you see it like a passion project. This is something that obviously these guys had to want to make.
Mm-hmm.
This couldn't possibly have been something they're like, well, sure, we'll get through Keanu.
Yeah. This wasn't something either that there was like a huge, studio pressure was like, yes, this is the best idea ever. Center a movie around kidnapping a cat for gangsters.
But I can imagine the pitch like, hey, listen, on YouTube, there are 300 million cat videos. Everyone loves cats.
Yeah, the cat aspect, I would say, actually sounds like a studio pitch. Like, we're going to send... Because we had the Grumpy Cat movie.
That was a movie?
I don't even think it made it to theaters. I think they ended up just releasing it, like, straight to video or on cable. But, like, somebody greenlit the Grumpy Cat movie. And so, like, I totally believe that there's studio executives like, yeah, if we could just monetize cat videos, we could be rolling in the dough.
I would just think of it as like it's such an untested in film thing. But it was a movie and it was made, so
Such
there you
an
go.
unnecessary thing.
Yes.
I mean, if you'd pitched me this movie, that's sort of like would have been my initial reaction. It was only because like even when I saw the stuff, like when I learned more about it, I was like, okay. Oh, it's Key and Peele? All right, I'm going.
Okay, but
I'm
without Key and Peele, what do you think?
I would not have seen this in theaters. Most likely, I would have maybe watched it on like Comedy Central when it got there.
Without Key and Peele or a similar caliber like group of comedians, I would not have seen this movie.
Yeah, it would have been
Yeah,
something
same
I would have watched like when there was like literally nothing on it, just came on, and I might watch it. But I would not have sought it out without Key and Peele behind it.
Got it.
I agree because, I would have treated more like a parody movie. Not that it's not, but like to me, I would have looked at it the same way I look at Scary Movie. And at first that was novelty, and now it's just kind of declined into this like, you know what, maybe I'll check it out, but it's not going to really appeal to me that much anymore. So I appreciate it. One of the things I didn't see and that I would love to kind of collect, but they spoofed various posters, whether The Martian, The Revenant, Mad Max, The Big Short, Star Wars, Bad Boys, Scarface, Captain America, Speed, The Matrix, and Deadpool were all spoofed. And I was trying to find all of these different posters. And I'm wondering how many posters of these of Keanu did you guys see?
I saw The Big Short one, which I found very creatively, because I haven't seen The Big Short movie, but I always did like the poster of the visually what it looked like, and I think it was very smart that they put the cat like everywhere on all these posters. It's really funny.
I really only had seen a couple, and now I feel disappointed that I didn't get to see the rest, and I might have to look these up. Because I did see the Martian one, and I saw the Mad Max Fury Road one, but I didn't see any other ones. Now I feel very let down. I'm sad.
Well,
The internet will be my savior.
I think that's also very just great promotion on its, in and of itself.
Yeah, did you have more of an affinity
him
towards The
home.
Martian and Mad Max? I don't know.
What?
Nothing.
No, I think
Maybe
that
they just knew those are your more favorite movies, and
maybe they're just the ones I noticed. Are you saying that I just was drawn to them more?
yeah,
I don't know, but I do
here's
think
the poster for
bring him home.
Bring Him Home.
it's a nice strategy.
Keanu.
Smart.
So yeah, and it just kind of makes you go, what is that? What am I watching?
Yeah, I remember they did their festival run and everything like that.
What I do appreciate it is that, and now in hindsight, because I don't think this was part of the, they didn't necessarily tie this into the marketing aspect of it, but once you see the movie, right, the fact that these are the posters, the fact that he was making cat calendar,
It works.
it goes 360,
I agree.
and ties in together at the end of the day.
These posters are
I'm gonna
hysterical.
bring up a couple of them in just a sec.
But unfortunately, it didn't get the marketing, despite our enjoyment of it and how much we like this movie, it didn't really bring in the numbers, or at least the numbers that were projected or wanted.
It was projected around 10 to 14 million.
And some people even had it higher than that.
Did they? Well, but at the same time, it just missed the $10 million mark. So I wouldn't necessarily call it like that far off. And here, like, to me, The Jungle Book is just killing it.
Yeah.
I chalk it up more to that than I think this movie is going to have great word of mouth, great legs, and I think it'll continue. Because what other comedies really out
I think it'll also have a really good streaming run. I think that once this hits things like Netflix, Redbox, I think it will draw a big audience there. Because it also is, comedies are generally things it's fun to sit on your couch and watch them with friends and just be like, well, have a nice laugh.
Right, and also, this movie was up against, again, Jungle Book, but also you had the Huntsman sequel coming back, so you had, the returning fans of
fantastic
that
movie.
film.
Yeah, but this had
To this one.
better reviews than The Huntsman, Mother's Day,
I know.
Ratchet and Clank that barely got even recognized.
Not to mention that, you have, this weekend, you have Civil War opening, and for people who budget their movies, it's like, I can't go every week. I can only go a certain amount of times a month. Keanu is just that's a good DVD movie.
Yeah.
It's something like, if you're going to the movies, great, I want to see that. But it's not something that you are desperate to see if you're not already planning a night out.
Well, plan a night out.
I'm sure people did. It was called Civil War, and we'll talk about it soon.
Talk about it next week.
Well, we'll definitely we'll talk about it next week. I think that's our only movie for next week.
Here's another poster. It's The Revenant.
Cat lost, cat found.
Inspired by true events.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
It's so creative. I love creative people. They're amazing.
We do indeed. Okay. Let's talk full numbers. So I mentioned it made about 9.5 million opening weekend. Came in at third. So overall,
To Jungle Book and The Huntsman on not one of the everything that week kind of came in on the lower side.
yeah.
And there
Overall.
was really no big national holidays either that would hinder them from going to see these movies.
Yeah, but the movie needed to come out before you're going to get into summer, and it's just completely overshadowed by things like Civil War, and we have a bunch of animation coming out. It's about to be very crowded.
Yeah, Disney movies coming out.
A lot there. All right.
Do you guys think there was any confusion just with the cute cat in an outfit on a poster, and then because it's so adult, do you think any kids wound up in this movie horrified?
Probably.
I'm sure at least one. At least one.
I mean, honestly,
Some little girl who was like, I want to play with the kitten. And then ended up in this movie, and their parents were horrified.
She's just running around, kitten please. And then
I mean,
this
honestly,
happens.
I went into this film not really realizing how much drugs and swearing was going to be involved in this film. I mean, from the trailer, you see it's like a fun, kind of adventurous action movie, but watching the actual content, I didn't realize how much drug involvement was going to be in it, how much swearing, how much gangster kind
Nudity,
of world was going to be in it.
Death, violence.
Yeah, there was a lot more in this film that I wasn't actually really expecting.
Well, he's at the end of the day, I don't. With these types of movies, what's fun about it is I don't think you can be prepared. Nothing's going to prepare you for the absurdity that you're about to face. I mean, you just have that expectation of, okay, the whole premise is about a cat being taken. It's absurd to begin with. You got to just go with it.
Yep.
True.
And if you don't buy in, it's no good.
No.
Any final thoughts as we wrap this out?
I think one of my favorite yet simple scenes of this film was when they were all establishing who they were. And, when they first got into that world, they're like, our bonding time.
Stitches.
Yeah, let's share one real moment of each other, or like one truth, or two things about yourself. And then the whole like establishment of the flipping off the wall that we'll also later see in the end that actually had a payoff too. So like for some reason I laughed a lot during everyone's
We switched flip day. I'm not gonna flip today, but tomorrow I'm gonna flip.
And it paid off, as Marisa said.
It was ridiculous, but it was so funny.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't Keegan doing it, but I was still impressed.
Yeah.
It was good. It was funny.
It
was a
is
great
funny.
So unexpected.
It was a great scene.
I laughed out loud so many times in this movie. For that, it's easy to recommend, but I would only recommend it to people who find the concept funny. It's like if you find this concept intriguing, you're probably going to find the movie funny. If you hear the concept and you're kind of like, ew, you're not going to like it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's just a straightforward way to figure it out if this movie's for you.
It delivers what it promised. Like, it promised you a cat movie with ridiculous jokes, and it delivered exactly that. Nothing more, nothing less.
True.
Yeah. And I did like the twist at the end with Iglesias and the whole drug family, because I did not see that coming, to be honest. So I like that, because I was curious as to why Cheddar was treating these Allentown brothers the way he was. So I like that. My final thoughts is, I greatly appreciated this movie. I think it's good to, support movies that have originality, whether comedies or otherwise. And that's what's going to keep getting these made. To go support. Tell your friends. It's funny. Zach, anything from you?
I mean, this was just it was fun. I could see myself rewatching this movie in like 6 months. Like, just it's like if I'm like sitting at home, like, what do I watch? Oh, Keanu's on? Great. Putting it on. It's it's that perfect balance of a stupid concept done in a smart way that it worked. And I'm looking forward to the next thing that this team does. Since there's no more, they're not doing Key and Peele anymore. I expect they'll probably do another feature soon, and I'm very much looking forward to like them taking what they did well here and expanding on it.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for watching us yet again on another Anatomy of Movie here on Popcorn Talk. Sarah Stratton now has a Twitter.
Yeah, although I haven't been using it, but it's at Sarah_Stratton. I'm gonna try to use it more.
Keep tweeting at her so that way she's overwhelmed and has to.
There you go. You can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
Zach Wilson.
You guys can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at @ZachWilson, ThatzachWilson.
That's right. And thank you guys for joining us today. Let us know in the comment section what you guys thought of this movie. What was your favorite scenes and things of that nature. Next week we'll be doing Civil War, Captain America 3, the latest one. We've got so much to talk about on that one, so definitely check back in. Obviously, the summer offers a wide array of movies that we'll be talking about, so check back in. And also, we've done a lot of movies in the past. John Wick in particular, if you want to check out that dissection, go back. So, you don't have to see all of the movies, but for the ones you do, check back in. That's all we ask. The Popcorn Talk on Instagram and Twitter. Movie Anatomy for this show specifically. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.